Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Keeping an Eye on the Geopolitical Ball with me, Jamie Shea, Senior Fellow at Friends of Europe. Of course, all eyes are on Russia and Ukraine at the moment, and NATO and the EU in recent weeks have made it clear that this is all about upholding the values of democracy in Europe, the ability of states to choose their future and whether to be members of an alliance. It's about cooperative security, and it's not about going back to 19th century spheres of influence. But if this is true of Ukraine, it's also true of other parts of Europe as well, notably the Western Balkans. And this is where I want to focus my attention today. There are three distinct challenges that the West now confronts in the Western Balkans. First is Serbia. It's the largest, most populous country in the region. And therefore, we need Belgrade to be moving in a European direction if the whole region is to be integrated into the Euro-Atlantic structures. But unfortunately, this is not happening. President Alexander Vučić of Serbia, visiting Monaco yesterday, made it clear that he doesn't want to take sides in the Russian-Ukraine conflict, that he wants to be both in the EU camp and in the camp of the authoritarians with Russia and China at the same time. He's pledged to a policy of political neutrality, but the EU usefully reminded Vučić yesterday that a country that wants to join the EU has to start behaving like an EU member state and apply sanctions, as the EU did yesterday against Russia for its behavior in the Donbass. And Belgrade has not done this previously. For example, back in 2014, after Russia annexed Crimea. Indeed, Russia and Serbia are growing closer. This week, Nikolai Patrushev, the head of the Russian Security Council, is going to be in Belgrade. And on the agenda, we understand, will be issues like the condemnation of Kosovo, Albania, North Macedonia for sending foreign fighters to help Ukraine defend itself in the Donbass. Absolutely no evidence for this, whereas there's plenty of evidence that many Serb fighters have gone off in recent years to fight for the other side, the Russian separatists in the Donbass. Russia has set up a so-called humanitarian center at Nice in southern Serbia, which many observers think is really an intelligence gathering center. And Russia and Belgrade have also set up a joint body to counter and oppose color revolutions, as they call them, in the region, which is a byword, of course, for democratization from below. Russia has also been selling Serbia large amounts of weaponry, fighter jets and so on, which are far in excess of what Serbia requires for its defense, given the low level of military tensions in the Western Balkans today. So clearly one of the big challenges for the European Union is going to be to persuade Serbs that they can't have their cake and eat it too. You can't be in the authoritarian camp and the democratic camp at the same time. But which levers? That's going to be one of the big questions. The second challenge is south in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The war there ended many years ago, back in 1995, but Bosnia has not really moved on to become a functioning state. It's the laggard in the process of the Western Balkans towards NATO membership and EU membership. And it's been effectively paralyzed by the aspirations of the Republika Srpska, the Serb entity in the eastern part of the country, to break away from the joint institutions and either become an independent state or join Serbia. Over the last couple of weeks, the leader of Republika Srpska, Milorad Dodik, has announced that he wants to withdraw the RS from the state institutions, create his own army, set up his own independent judiciary, not cooperate with taxation and financial arrangements. This is further paralyzing Bosnia. So the Americans, unsurprisingly, have already imposed sanctions against Milorad Dodik, and the EU foreign ministers meeting this week have threatened to do something similar. But beyond that immediate problem, the EU needs to work harder at constitutional reform of Bosnia, particularly a new electoral law before the elections in October, and to see what we can do to make Bosnia actually function as a state and catch up with the rest of the pack. Third big challenge is Kosovo. Kosovo celebrated its 14th anniversary of independence this week. Bittersweet occasion because a lot of progress has been made in Kosovo, particularly in creating sort of jobs and improving infrastructure. Kosovo has held some turbulent but nonetheless free elections and has a vibrant media. But on the other hand, relations with Belgrade are still in the icebox in terms of the refusal of Belgrade to recognize Kosovo as an independent country. And Belgrade has been sort of blocking Kosovo from joining international organizations like Interpol. Some progress under EU mediation has been made in terms of travel and trade across the border and telephone links and so on. But the big issue, which has to be confronted apart from the recognition issue, is how Kosovo will deal with the 100,000 Serbs that remain in the north of Kosovo in terms of creating an association of Serb municipalities. The EU and NATO need to push harder on both sides to get them to move forward. As I said earlier, all is not lost in the Western Balkans. We're not dealing with an immediate massive military crisis like in Ukraine, and NATO and the EU have more levers to act. So what should they do? First, the EU has got to keep the membership aspiration of all of the countries open. That's a key driver for reform. The EU has wobbled a little bit on this in the past, but it mustn't do so in the future. Secondly, NATO should offer the membership action plan to Kosovo, as it has done to Bosnia, to drive the reform of security structures. NATO and the EU should work together, as they did in North Macedonia in 2001, to deal with any tensions or any crisis situations. We should also encourage civil society. It's very vibrant in the Western Balkans. Even in a country like Serbia, there are opposition protests. There's a strong LGBT rights movement. Gay Pride has one of its biggest annual marches in Belgrade. And there's a strong environmental movement in terms of the recent protests against a mining investment by Rio Tinto Zinc. Many small and medium-sized enterprises and much empowerment of women. Bottom-up pressure for change in that region may be more important than top-down pressure. And the EU, the US, the West needs to encourage those democratic grassroots at local level as much as we possibly can. So on the geopolitical chessboard, the authoritarians are moving to expand their influence and to undermine democratic values. The West needs to make sure that we don't allow them, at least not in the Western Balkans, for that to happen. Thank you for watching and listening today. Look forward to engaging with you next week.